Hi, Shreya.
Hi, a very good evening to one and all. I'm Shreya Tuli, co-founder of We Rise Together Foundation, and I will be your host for the third episode of My First Period, an Instagram live session by We Rise Together Foundation to break the taboo surrounding periods. Through this initiative, we will interview women and girls about their first period experiences and learn more about menstrual hygiene from them. Do you know that 23 million girls drop out of school annually due to lack of proper menstrual hygiene? Well, we at We Rise Together Foundation are working to solve this problem through one of our initiatives, that is She Hygiene, wherein we've distributed over 4,000 sanitary pads to underprivileged women since the pandemic. We've also organized various educational sessions to spread awareness. Our guest for today is Soumya Singhal. Ms. Soumya Singhal is the founder of Girl Uprise that works towards better menstrual hygiene management and legal literacy amongst the undeserved. A researcher and gender equality advocate, she dabbles in the policy space and the social sector to find synergies and solutions for persisting problems. A very good evening, Soumya. Thank you so much for giving us your time. It is a real pleasure for me to host you today.
Thank you so much, Shreya. Thank you to the team at We Rise Together Foundation for calling me, for having a conversation that I've had quite a number of times, but a conversation that never gets obsolete, especially in today's day and age. Thank you so much for the invitation.
I completely agree with you, and I hope you are in wonderful spirits today. So, Soumya, firstly, to set an example towards ending this hesitation surrounding menstruation, would you like to start by sharing what your first period experience was like?
Yeah, sure. Um, so something that I would like to, before even I begin my story, what I would like to put forth is different people have different first period experiences, and that is all right. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, that is marked by panic because of unawareness beforehand. Lucky for me, my mother sat me down and she told me what periods were, why I got them, and what happens. So when I got my first period, um, I did not panic. There was no sense of unawareness. It was something that I was told. Again, the experience was sudden, which did jilt me because again, it's a new experience. But um, fortunately, I had a very aware first period experience wherein I knew what was happening, I knew why it was happening, and I could talk to my mother, my eldest sister. Having an eldest sister helped a lot because, again, her experience was different, but her experience did give my mother an insight into what she could tell me. And I had friends around me whom I could talk to. Not always openly, but again, hushed conversations are conversations. Sometimes these conversations help you to begin. And that is why I would say my first period experience was it wasn't absolutely smooth, but it wasn't jarring to any end.
Yeah, it's great to know that you had a very supportive environment around you, and I think that it is very crucial for a woman or for a girl because we are anyway going through so many hormonal changes, and just to know that okay, someone is there to support me or to hear me out, I think it's a very important factor.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So moving on to the next question. As a striving change maker, what all challenges have you faced? What are the key aspects of periods which people are unaware of, according to you?
Okay, so I'll address the challenges part first. I think the biggest challenger I, as an individual, or Girl Uprise as an organization, have had to face is just navigating through taboo and through myths because a lot of things have been said about periods, even in hushed conversations. But a lot of these things are not always good. So, what we had to do was first, it was even for the team, even if we are menstruators, we had to unlearn a lot of things. We had to unlearn the myths that we had been fed. We had to unlearn the binary nature of conversations we took around menstruation. And then we had to help other people do the same navigation. So that was our first challenge. The second one was when we're on ground, you're working with people with menstruators and with non-menstruators, right? But a lot of times people might not be willing to listen to you for a variety of reasons, for their own prerogatives. Again, a huge part of it was also because menstruation is a taboo topic. A lot of people felt just uncomfortable to sit and talk about periods. A lot of mothers, in fact, weren't um, completely okay with young daughters learning about puberty before they reached puberty itself. And the fact that they were too young, and in fact, we had to like cancel one of our workshops because of the same reason. Uh, and that also feeds into unawareness. Again, it's a double-edged sword. It's a chicken and egg problem wherein you're trying to create awareness, but there also exists an unawareness, and you're trying to counter that unawareness, but that awareness is coming back and creating problems for you and your work. And the unawareness is not just about what menstruation is and the process of menstruation, but the different type of period products and how do we use them. And again, the binary nature, as I said, the whole conversation about gender that comes with menstruation now. Also, a huge problem that came up eventually is creating demand. So when you are a menstruator, if you get to this stage wherein you're using period products, or if you're an organization who's working with menstruators and you're trying to ensure that people use products, there's only so much you can do. You can introduce them to period product. Same way, say government schemes and policies can help girls in schools or women uh, get access to period products through schools, through Anganwadi centers. But where does the demand lie? Is the demand actually present? Are people actually willing to go and buy? That was again a huge challenge that not just we faced, but a lot of people faced. And this also feeds into the aspects of menstruation that people are unaware of. Again, and the first thing that I mentioned is not something that I am just saying out of my own experiences and experiences of people at Girl Up Right, but also government reports and data show that people are unaware of why menstruation happens in the first place. They know what menstruation is. They know that you bleed, but why does that happen? The process behind it. Different types of period products that exist. How do we use them? Sanitary pads are the most commonly used. People, a huge chunk of people know how to use them. But what about, say, cups? What about tampons? What about period panties? What about cloth pads? There exists a variety of products that just go unnoticed, and these are in whole the kind of things people are unaware of.
I completely agree. So you were mentioning about how both menstruators and non-menstruators should have the knowledge. So even like even while we conduct drives, we've faced issues like these. Just due to lack of knowledge. For example, we were going to distribute sanitary pads at this particular orphanage, and the girls were so uncomfortable because we had male volunteers, and they were so hesitant just because they were taught to not discuss it with people who are not menstruators, and which is why all the male volunteers had to go outside and wait while the female volunteers distributed the sanitary pads. So yeah,
Yeah, that
knowledge
happened.
is key aspect,
Exactly.
and it is very important. And yeah, you were talking about the knowledge of about different period products, and I agree upon that too, because this morning only we had a sanitary pad donation drive, and so today we were telling. I took a menstrual cup along with me, and I shared what a menstrual cup is and how it is to be used. And I was so fascinated to see their faces. They were so shocked at like while looking at the product. They were so curious about it, and a lot of them shared that they had never even heard of it. So yeah, the education is the key aspect here, and it's very important, rightly covered. Moving on to the next question. You are invested in the social sector, and you're also an advocate for gender equality. What was your driving motivation for founding Girl Uprise? Could you share some experiences and some insights about your organization?
Okay. So I founded Girl Uprise in around October 2019 with three other people from my college. And the three of us had worked in social sector before, in NGOs from college and everything. And um, that kind of that drive to actually work continued beyond the year that we were supposed to work on it. And we had a simple motive to empower women in particular. How we'd eventually do that is something that we'd come to figure out a little later. But we were very sure that advocacy and talking and conversations would be a huge part of it. And again, advocacy comes in a lot of forms. So, and we started during the pandemic, fully launched on floor during the pandemic. So advocacy became a huge tool for us. And the basic tenet that we followed was that there exist challenges and gaps in whatever exists. There exist problems, of course, but people and people have, and yet there exists gender inequality. And that gender inequality does also feed into other forms of inequality. So something is missing, and we tried to fill those gaps a little more systematically. Um, it was, I guess, in November 2020 when we decided that we could work on uh, eradicating period poverty, because we were working on another project with the UNHCR for Afghan and Rohingya refugee women. And we had a question that, okay, they're getting what they're getting in India as refugees, but what about um, what about menstrual hygiene? Do they get period products? Do they know about it? Because we've had conversations and with of course our community, and again the conversation that we had made us feel that maybe they did not have the most supportive system in terms of getting access to pads and having knowledge of menstruation. That kind of struck us somewhere. And then in on Women's Day in 2021, we formally launched our campaign hashtag for the stigma, which again, as I said, we had to be a little more systematic when we're going about it. So we had a twofold motive of uh, a providing menstruators with safe period products, and second, equipping them with menstrual literacy. It was important to address the biology of menstruation and normalize things. It's something again that we carry forward, normalization of a lot of taboos that shouldn't be taboos in the first place. And we realize that again, just talking about the biology of menstruation might be a little incomplete, right? We had to talk about the taboos. We had to talk about the whys and the what of things. And what we do at Girl Uprise is again a result of all of these bunch of realizations that happen through just looking at data, looking at what's existing, talking to people in the first place. And we came up with a bunch of modules that would cover a bunch of things from menstrual cycles to use of products to nutrition during menstruation to menstrual disorders and everything. And we believe that, and we still hold it true. It still holds true that while you're working towards menstrual hygiene and helping people realize a safe menstrual experience, destigmatization takes the forefront of the entire process. And when you're doing that, you're not just changing their outlook towards things and menstruation, but also the way they experience it. So again, what Girl Uprise is trying to do, is not just for menstruation, but for other projects and other ideas and pillars itself, is changing outlooks and also changing experiences by identifying gaps.
It's so inspiring to know all these facts. It's so inspiring to know that you are covering everything and you're managing everything so effortlessly and in such a, organized manner. So it is truly inspirational. I'd also like to know if you have had any instances that you would like to share to educate the audience.
Okay, so at Girl Uprise, we conduct, as I said, a bunch of workshops around Delhi specifically. And interestingly, every workshop is a little different than the other one. And it's not different in terms of what we cover, the topics we cover, but how we cover it. So, for example, I remember we went to a cluster in Jhandewalan and we wanted to initiate conversations around period. But there was um, uh, there was there was a lack in in what in the word that we use for period versus what they use. So it took us a good 2 minutes to find a middle ground and tell them we're going to talk about period because they had a different word for it. So we had to actually walk them through it. We had to tell them about the process that this happens. You bleed, there's vaginal bleeding, and they're like, okay, this is what you're talking about. And that actually gave me um, two very big lessons. The first one is I call it the different lesson because it made me realize that different contexts pose different challenges in front of you that would require different approaches to devise different solutions. Because what worked in a Jhandewalan cluster might not work in, say, an Akshardham cluster or an Akshardham shelter, in fact. And the second lesson that came out of it is that you need to constantly unlearn and then learn. You need to constantly evolve the knowledge that you have to stay aware as an individual and to stay relevant as an organization. And it also made me realize that um, if you're someone who's working in the social sector space and if you're an organization, you need to do your homework. You need to actually interact with people because that again is a part of your homework. Again, the people and community that you work with are stakeholders. They're not just receivers, but they're also active participants, which is what makes them stakeholders. So just learn more about what your beneficiaries know or what they don't know, because again, if you're someone like us who is very heavy on menstrual education, education fills gaps and be it anywhere. So you need to know what works best in what context and just again evolve the methodology you use, be creative, use visual aids, do nukkar nataks and activities, and always share experiences because it's only when we shared our experience as as menstruators and they figured out what it was that we could actually start the conversation in the first place. So I guess these two major lessons and then whatever follows is something that could help maybe anyone who's sitting in the audience right now.
I completely agree. Even we've experienced these things because for example, when we conduct a drive in slum areas, whereas when we conduct a drive in schools, so the experiences are very different because in schools the girls are aware about about the process and about how to use sanitary pads, and because they've studied it or the teachers have told them about the process, and they are well aware about menstruation, and if not well aware, they at least know what the term is and how everything goes about it. Whereas when we go in slum areas, there are that we even find people who don't even know, like they use leaves and grasses and cloths, so they are so unaware. They see a sanitary pad and they don't even know what to do with those sanitary pads. So when we go to these slum areas, we also have to tell how to use a sanitary pad and how it is to be put at the correct location and then used.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that becomes again important because you
Yeah.
need to shift, you need to have a safe menstrual experience, which means you have to shift to sanitary products.
Yeah, right. So, what advice would you like to give to the girls who are at the onset of puberty, and how should girls who aren't in a supportive environment prepare for their periods?
Um, I think at the outset, you need to read and learn. And you need to learn about not just what periods are, but the menstrual cycle as a whole, because it's not just say 4 or 5 days of periods. There's a 28 to 30 day cycle, 32-day cycle that you need to know about because it's your own body. And it always helps to be in sync with your body and its needs and what it does. So read about it. If you have access to internet, then go to the right sources. Don't go anywhere. Just go to the right sources. And you can also, again, the whole idea of supportive family and the whole idea of supportive environment can extend beyond family. If, say, your family is not the most supportive or open to conversations, seek people who are. They could be teachers. Talk to a teacher. Talk to a biology teacher, if nothing more, because they're they've read about it to a certain extent, right? And talk to your friends who might be menstruating or who again will hit puberty and will start menstruating. Talk to family or friends. I have friends and whose families are really supportive. There are people I can go to for anything that I want. And creating a support system beyond your own family also helps because again you're not stationed within your family, you will move, so you'll have to learn how to build support systems because you will have different experiences around a lot of things. And if you're someone who does get into the habit of creating support systems, it just helps in general, but it also helps with the onset of puberty. And again, when you're talking about the onset of puberty, it could start very small. Again, menstruation is a part of puberty. Puberty is also change of voice. It's also about getting face acne. It's also about growing body hair. So even if, say, at home you cannot jump right into talking about menstruation, start small. Talk about basic things that they can relate to, or basic things that seem unfortunately a lot more natural than menstruation and a lot more clear and out in the open than menstruation. Start small, read a lot, learn as much as you can, and find reliable and correct support systems.
That's some great advice, I must say. And I truly agree with your words. Building a support system and starting to learn about things on your own is very important. Now, while we were on the previous question, you also mentioned that there are some myths surrounding menstruation. So, in the past 3 years, as a founder of Girl Uprise, have you come across people who believe in such superstitions? Do you think people should believe and spread such myths about menstruation?
Okay, I have come across a lot of people who believe in myths around menstruation, and the biggest one and the most common one is that it should not be talked about. Which again, it's called a myth for a reason, because it's untrue, because it is irrelevant in at this point in time. And a lot of times, people who hold these myths are also menstruators themselves. They're also families who have experienced who have menstruators, right? And it becomes important to not believe in in myths, and to debase those myths for primary two reasons. First is that when you believe in myths and when you believe in taboo, you stigmatize menstruation, but you also stigmatize the menstruator. So, I'll give you an example. A lot of people, and a lot of people do believe that menstruation itself is impure. Thus, a menstruator becomes impure. So, if say I am on my period, I am considered impure. So, anyone who will come in touch with me will become impure. What do? You put me aside physically. So, there are states and there are cultures wherein say when you're menstruating, you're supposed to live in another hutchment outside of the house. That is not just stigmatizing the menstruation, but also physically creating distance between menstruators and anyone who's not menstruating at the current moment. Another thing another reason why you should not believe in myths is that, again, when you believe in myths, you adopt and adapt practices that are harmful, and not just as a menstruator but also as a non-menstruator who is living with a menstruator. So what happens? It can lead to diseases, some of which can become life-threatening over time. So you might get a UTI, you might develop, say, period menstrual diseases. And since again, because myths exist and because you're not willing to actually get it checked, it might become severe over time. Sepsis is very common in Indian women, and it becomes important to just not believe in myths and debase them, not just for social reasons but also for health reasons. So that is what I think. These two things become very important.
I completely agree. And so basically, it's very important to segregate facts and beliefs because a belief might be true or untrue, but a fact is what carries forward and what should carry forward. And one should rely on these facts and act accordingly and seek a doctor whenever one needs to, basically.
Fact and human experience, because a lot of facts also come out of human experiences, which is why I've been saying it quite often that you need to talk. I need to talk to people, your friends, your family. If you're in an organization running or working on it, in it, then just beneficiaries. Talk to people, because human experiences are what ground facts in reality.
Right, I completely agree with you. So the next question, I like to ask this question from everyone who's working in the sphere of menstrual hygiene because I am also learning and I really want and I'm also searching for the answer to this question. I'll go ahead with it. So as you know, there are numerous change makers who are working towards eradicate period poverty. You and I are one of those. However, the figures are still grim. In India, 88%, that is 320 million girls and women, still don't use any sanitary products. What do you think is the reason for this, and how can we reverse these figures to get a positive result?
That is an important question. Thank you for that, Shreya. Um, Again, the first statement that I would like to make at the outset is when you're looking at menstruation and menstrual hygiene management in particular, a lot of people look at it simply as use of products, as getting access to products and using them. But MHM goes beyond that. It is also about access to to sanitation facilities like clean toilets, like clean water. It's also about menstrual education. And that's not just me saying, that's also under the mandate of the National Health Mission and the NHM scheme under National Health Mission. So I guess a reason, like a couple of reasons why a lot of people do not use sanitary products is again apps knowledge. They do not know uh, what menstruation is. They do not know how it happens. They do not know where to get products from. And the other thing is access. But while we're talking about access, it's important to kind of broaden what we mean by access. It's not just like proximity to sellers and just knowing where to buy uh, period products from. It's also, can you afford to buy them out of your own pocket? Because again, uh, menstrual hygiene products are out of pocket expenditure. And if you do not come from, if you come from a low income family, the family head might not be willing to say spend that much money on packs that are there in the market. And the third is what kind of impedes on access to products is again taboo and house rules. As another house rule is like would rather spend money on on XYZ thing instead of spending money on period products, on pads. And and as I mentioned that there exist government schemes and there exist um, policies at both national and state level, especially in Delhi, that would ensure that menstruators from especially low income family can get products, be it schools or be it the Anganwadi centers. At Anganwadi centers, you get 6 pads for 6 rupees. That's 1 rupee per pad. Now that might seem like a very cheap or a very affordable price, but you do not just use 6 pads in a cycle. You use a lot more pads, right? And buying, say, 12 pads for a month for 12 rupees might be okay when you're earning 30,000 a month or 40,000 a month, but not when you're earning 500 rupees a day or 1,000 rupees a day. That's it's a proportionate thing, but it's again an out of pocket expenditure. Since you don't have things that are pushing you to buy it, there exists a demand gap. That's also something that I had addressed earlier. There exists a demand gap because you don't have access, because you don't have information and education. So, and again, even if you do get these products, where will you change them? Again, you need to change a pad. You need to find a clean enough washroom to change a pad. Or if you're someone who's not using a pad, if you're someone who's using even cloth for that matter and correctly using cloth, because you can correctly use cloth and cloth pads, you need to wash it. You need to wash it with clean water. Do you have access to clean water? That's another question altogether. Which is why I say do not look at menstrual hygiene management and the absence of use of sanitary products in isolation as just one thing. It's an interaction of these three things in particular. So, as someone who's as people, as citizens, as organizations who are trying to reverse these figures, it becomes important that we deal with all of these three things in isolation, one by one, but also together because they complement each other. Now, for an organization like, say, Girl Uprise, we cannot help build toilets or, in fact, help build clean toilets. We cannot ensure that menstruators have continuous access to different kinds of period products throughout their menstrual cycles. And I don't mean it like 1 month or 1 year. I mean it like if you're menstruating for 40 years, you have continuous supply of products till then. What we can help with is providing you with education. But what if I take it a little step further because I'm using my policy brain? What if I take it a step further and I bring in institutions and the government in place? I'm saying, okay, you're providing pads. make them accessible in terms of the proximity. Because again, in the pandemic, you couldn't go out. And only some Anganwadi centers had Asha workers and Anganwadi workers coming to people's houses and helping them with getting products. Again, you're helping people with getting access to products. Another thing that you can do is while you're building a lot of toilets under Swachh Bharat, are they clean? And now what I can ask the government, and that is where advocacy comes in, right? What I can say is that this is a problem. I have these many people who agree this is a problem. Fix it. And you can do that by getting in touch with your local MLAs. You can get in touch with your DM. Because again, a lot of public toilet, and again, when you're looking at toilets, you might not be able to do a lot for individual household toilets, but you can of course talk about public toilets. A lot of public toilets are not clean. And what you can do is you can reach out to your DMs, you can reach out to your MLA and say that this is a huge problem. There is an identified problem. You need to work on it because you are my representative. Do it over emailing, do it over cold calls, call their office. This is a part of advocacy. You can do it again as an individual, as a collective, as an organization. Then comes an education. If an organization like Girl Uprise, for example, takes up workshops and modules, delivers modules, that is a part of education. But again, as I said, I'm taking it one notch higher. I am saying let's develop a more comprehensive curriculum for menstrual education. We already have a very weak sex ed curriculum because if you're in CBSE, then you have that one chapter and maybe you have like a one short paragraph on menstruation. And we've been talking about comprehensive sex ed for recently. It has gained some furor. I'm saying add menstrual education to that because it's not just it's sexual and reproductive rights and education and health. And menstrual education, menstrual hygiene is a subset of that. So while we have organizations independently working on it, why not have more institutional and systemic things that could aid to again an interplay of these three things and actually give us better statistics, real substantial change for real better substantial statistics. So yeah, that's a very wordy and very heavy answer to make, but that would be my answer to the question.
I believe that you've raised some serious, questions, and you've given some very nice solutions too. And summing up, I feel affordability, accessibility, and education are the three aspects that you covered, and it is very crucial to attack and target each one of those. And I hope we can we'll be able to at least one day reach towards our goal and see that the figures are reversed and it's a better place.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So lastly, I want to know what message would you like to give to our audience watching this episode, to both menstruators and non-menstruators?
Okay. So I am not entirely sure, but I'm assuming that a huge chunk of our audience right now is youth. And by youth, I mean anyone between, you usually say it's between 18 and 25 or 30, but let's just say we have a wide audience of between 10 to people aged 10 to 35. I believe that as youth who are trying to create a safe and inspiring and empowering space for menstruators and for conversations on menstruation, it becomes important that we first identify why the space that we hold is unsafe. And for that, we don't just need to talk about the biology behind menstruation, but also the sociology behind it. We need to counter, again, I'm saying the word taboos and myths. And we need to do that by talking to menstruators because we need experiences, human experiences to ground realities. But we also need to talk to non-menstruators because it's a transfer of knowledge and that needs to happen. And an important thing that I guess the youth especially can take up and should take up is moving on from the binary of conversations. It's about the fact that gender is no longer a binary. And again, any conversation that involves gender, as most conversations do, should not be binary. It's a non-binary spectrum, which is why women are not the only ones to get periods and men do not get, and it's not that men do not get periods. Because if you look at things binary and if you do not acknowledge the evolving spectrum of gender, you just simply miss out on a diversity of experiences, and you do not acknowledge different identities, and these different identities do play an important role in devising solutions. Um, which is also, if in case anybody's noticed, that I've been using the word menstruator over, say, a girl or a woman. Uh, it's acknowledgement of different identities, and um, it becomes, again, as I said, important to acknowledge all these identities. And I see conversations being a source of education. And these conversations are, again, do not have to be very massive, do not have to be at a great scale. Even if you're starting small, that's good enough. Even if you're changing one mindset, that is good enough. You do not have to change the world. You have to change one person at a time, and the world will change itself eventually. And um, I also feel that the youth will play an incredibly important role being a lobby, because, again, in India we do not have such formalized lobby policies and lobbying structures, but the youth has in recent years become a great lobby. We've seen that for climate change, we've seen that Friday for Future, and that can translate into larger issues, and it can translate into another kind of issue, and maybe menstrual policy is one thing that the youth can pick up. And um, I think advocacy and lobbying in terms of menstruation will have to be very holistic and just push for a safe menstrual experience. And that safe menstrual experience will not be only for, say, you and I, who can afford to buy 15 pads a month. You have, say, families and teachers who will talk to us about period, who will have access to clean toilets and clean water. But it could also be someone who might not have the same thing. And the youth, again, as I said, can be very strong lobby, because, I mean, if we're the future, we might start acting now.
I What a beautiful message, Soumya. And
Thank
yes, we need to look towards the psychological factors, the educational factors, laws, and advocacy related terms, and then the physical factors about how one's body changes and how we need to react and react towards it and spread awareness. And we and thank you for sharing your invaluable insights and experiences with us today. I'm sure we've taken a small step towards breaking the taboo surrounding menstruation through this episode of My First Period today. We Rise Together Foundation is continuously working hard towards ensuring safe menstrual hygiene for all. So support us in this cause by donating through the details in the caption. If you want to volunteer in the organization or collaborate with us, you can send a direct message and we will reach back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching today's episode of My First Period. See you in the
Shreya,
next one.
if I may also have a very quick plug-in, because I have a public space, so I'll not take it. Also, Girl Uprise has been working for menstrual hygiene management for, as I said, since March 2021. And we're always on the lookout for people who can donate for pads. We're on the lookout for people who would be willing to be a part of our focus group discussions and help us in module making. But we also have a huge amount of a huge number of wings and ways in which you can help us, and you can be a part of the community, because, again, we're building a community. So feel free to check us out on our social media pages, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and do feel free to email us in case you want to collaborate on projects, or if you need assistance with things, or you feel that you can assist us, because, again, we're building a community wherein everybody interacts and things and issues intersect. So why not build together? Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Don't forget to check out the social media pages of both Girl Uprise and We Rise Together Foundation. See you in the next episode. Till then, namaste.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.